Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be looking at a neat little bit of functionality within Power BI, which allows you to group or bin data together. So grouping or binning data allows you to take a range of data. For example, if we've got numerical values such as the age of a work order, you might want to bin these work orders together. So it could be work orders that are between 0 and 10 days, 10 and 50 days, and 50 to 100 days and others. Or you might even want to group together particular category values. So for example, you might have some disciplines or trades that you might want to group together and create a new custom group just for exploding the data. So we'll get into this in a bit more detail, and I'll go through a few scenarios that you might want to be thinking about for grouping and binning data. Okay, so let's get started. So I am going to create a new stacked column chart here, and I'm going to look at the age or the amount of days that a work order has been at its most recent status. Okay, so we can see here that we've got some work orders that have got a negative value, so we need to sort those out. But then if we look here, we can see that we've got a range of different number of days along the bottom here. So these are the days the work order has been in its current status. Now there's a big cluster here, and it's pretty difficult to sort of make these out, but you can tell there's up to maybe 250. There's the most of the work orders. Then it's got a bit of a peak here, and then there's a bit of a long tail, and it just kind of peters out, with some up to as far as 3,000 days at its current status. So there might be some issues with the data there, but you can see the point here. It's very difficult to analyze that data and make sense of it, because I really want to look into this in a bit more detail. So this is where we can start to use the binning functionality or groups within Power BI. So to do that, we're going to go and we're going to find this days at current status. I'm going to right click on here, and we're going to create a new group. So here's a group here. So basically you've got a name for it. So we'll call this days at current status bins. That's fine, we'll just leave it at that for just now. That's a field we're going to bin together. We've got a few different options here. We've got list or we've got bin. Okay, so for this one here, I'm going to just show you both options, because there's scenarios where you might want to use bins, you might want to use lists. So let's start off with bin. Then we can choose either to bin the data, and binning the data is really just put them into categories, okay, based on their value. And the value here is going to be days at current status. So we can do it based on the size of the bin or the number of bins. Okay, so we can specify we want the bins to be between 0 and 100 days. So we want the bin to be 100 days basically. Or we can say, right, we'll let you decide based on the range of the data, but we want to be able to see 10 different bins or 5 different bins. So let's start off with the number of bins first of all, and I'm going to stick that to 10. And we can see these grayed out values are telling you that you've got one value that's -1, which doesn't really make sense, but I'll sort that out, up to a maximum value of 2,819. So this is a data range that Power BI has looked at to basically decide what bins that it's going to segregate the data or separate the data into. And what's calculated here is that if we want 10 bins, they're going to have an equal size of 228 days basically. So 0 to 100 or -1 to 100 to 228, 282, sorry, 282 to whatever 282 plus 282 is. My additions are going to be stretched to that just at the moment off the top of my head, and then it'll sort of continue on from there. So let's click OK. So we can see here that nothing's happened in this chart here, and that's because it's actually created this new calculated column or this new field here, which is days at current status bins. Okay, so I need to go and add that into the visual now. So let's add that in and get rid of that one. And we can see that it's bin the data here. Okay, so let's add in the data labels. Okay, so here's our bins we've got here. So this, along the bottom here, is the days at current status. Now, one of the slight issues with this approach is that this will still automatically separate the x-axis at equal intervals for the actual x-axis data labels. So they can look a little bit weird. Bearing in mind that we've got 282 as each one of these. So you can see that's roughly just up to 500 or just over 500. But what we can see here is that the data has been binned into these sections here, and that it's a lot easier to kind of understand what's happening at this end of the scale. And then we can see it sort of petering out here and getting less and less. So that's the first approach. Now that's great if you want to have bins that are equal size, but actually I want to explore this area here in a bit more detail, and these areas here I'm not so interested in, and I can sort of maybe group everything above 1000 or even above 500 or some value to be others. So let's look at how we can do that. Okay, so I'm back in my report and I'm going to take a copy of this, and I am going to go back into days at current status, and I'm going to go and create a new group. Now this one here, I'm going to select list. Okay, now you'll see I selected list here and that changes that to groups. So I'll just leave that, I'll just go with that for just now. So what we've got here is ungrouped values. So every single value, so this is every single instance that we've got a work order whose age is in here. Now we've got quite a lot of work orders, so pretty much every value is accounted for. Certainly in the early numbers, the lower numbers here, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We then need to assign those to a group. Okay, so let's start off with the first one, and I'm going to just select the first 10. I'm going to choose -1 as well. I'm going to select the first 10 and I'm going to choose to group them together. And then we can see these are all the values that we've selected here. And I'm going to call this one 0 to 10 days. Okay, now that's group number 1. Then we can see that it's only the ungrouped values that are here. So it really helps us out because it tells us, right, okay, well these are values that have already been grouped, -1 to 10. But let's go and group the other ones. So I'm going to group the next 20 values here, or the next 10 values. And then we're going to group them together. So it does take a little bit of time just to set this up. And then the next one I'm going to go right up to 50. So you can see that the difference here, the major difference here is I can decide the groups, and they don't need to be symmetrical, or they don't need to be equal like they did if you just use the binning option. So with the group option, you can select the values that you want to fit into each one of these different groups here. So let's choose that one, and I'm just going to minimize that, and we'll call this one 21 to 50, and then I'm going to choose 50 to 100 or 51 to 100, and then I'm going to choose 100 to 365. Now we can see here that I've actually chosen, rather than 365, I've chosen it to be up to 265. So not to worry, we're going to select the values up to 365. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hold down Control, and I'm going to click on that group there, which I want to add it to, and I'm going to press the group button. Okay, now that's going to add those values to this group as well. So now we can say 101 to 365. Okay, and then we've got others. So I don't need to do anything with others. Anything else that's above 365. So we can see here 366 right through to 2819 are automatically going to be put in with others. So in here, I'm going to rename that to 366 plus days. And then other. Okay, it's added other automatically. Okay, so that is the list option there. So let's go in and look at how that looks. So it's created this one here. So that's groups. Rather than bins, we've got days at current status groups. And I'm going to add that into the x-axis. And here we can see here, we've got each of these. Now, they've actually sorted this numerically just now. So let's go in. We want to sort this rather than by this days at current status groups. Okay, and that isn't helping as much, but let's go and sort this by ascending. Okay, so we can see here 0 to 10. We've then got 100 to 365, then we've got 11 to 20. So we need to do something here. So to go and edit a group, let's right click on here and let's go and edit groups. And the simplest way to do this is to prefix each one of these with a letter and a number. And then when you sort ascending, it's going to sort them in the order that you want. So let's go in here and I'm just going to prefix each one of these. Now I like to use a letter rather than a number, particularly if you've got numbers already in here, because it might get confusing if you've got 1 dash 10 to 0 to 10, it just might be a little bit confusing. So use a letter, keeps it completely different to numbers that you're using here to signify the ranges of the days. Okay, so now we can see it's been sorted nicely and we can see that there are 2,000 work orders here, 2,398 work orders here, 2,000 here, so quite a chunk here up to 20 days, and then 20 to 50 days we've got even more than here. And then we can see that this is a big chunk here. It's quite big in number as well, so we might even want to split that. But pretty much we can start to get a picture of where everything's lying up to the point where we've got this F, which is greater than 365 days. So you might also want to see this as a percentage. Now that's the beauty of this, because we've created this as a field, we can aggregate the data however we want. So this one here is counting the number of work orders, but I've actually created another measure which is a percentage of all selected, so a percentage of all these work orders there. So let's go and pull that in instead. Okay, and so we can start to see the percentages here and where each of the percentages lies within that particular date range. So that is how you can bin something using a list. Now the other thing as well is that these are all filterable, or can all be filtered. Okay, so I've got a list of work order status codes here, and of course if I was to click on the status code, we can see if we're looking at work orders which have been at scheduling, this is the spread of these work orders here. So most of them, not a lot have been waiting for scheduling, or have been at the status of scheduling for more than 365 days. Quite a few have been in this area here, which really is anything up to 50 days, so we can see that there. So we can start to see the spread of these work orders and their ages, and we can filter it by status or by discipline or by anything you want. So if you did want to do this with a category value, let's just go and look at that. Okay, so I've added in a new bar chart there, and on the axis we've got the work type and we've got the number of work orders here. So what I can do here is find the work type, right click on here, I'm going to create a new group. We've only got the option to list because it's recognized here that we can't bin these values because they're not numerical. So let's go and select these ones here and we'll group them first. They're corrective, and then select these ones here and we'll group these. We'll call them preventative. And there's a little box at the bottom here that is not ticked automatically like it was with the previous example here, but if we click this it says include other groups, and it's going to give us an other, and that's going to automatically group those other ones into this other value here. So we'll call this, we'll just call it other, and then we're just going to click OK there, and then we're going to pull that into here instead of work type, and we can see here that we've got preventative, corrective, other, and we've got blank there. Okay, so I've filtered out the blank and we can see here preventative, corrective and others. So I'll take off this filter here, yep. So again, just a little bit of something slightly different when you're using the category values rather than the actual numerical values to group the data, and you're going to select which values belong to which group. So hopefully you found this useful. I find it useful when you're starting to explore data, and you can use it anyway, you know, just to create an equivalent to a calculated column. You can do this using calculated columns, but this is a lot more straightforward and a lot easier, really, particularly if you're not used to creating DAX and creating these calculated columns with some code. So thanks again for listening. If you found this useful, it's always appreciated if you give the video a thumbs up. And if you want to keep up to date with the latest videos, then hit the subscribe button and you'll get a notification whenever I release a video, which tends to be every week. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you in the next video.